second chapter, which is on brain biology and behavior. So there it is. There is your essence right there. All right, this is what you're all about. That's your brain. Looks like a big hunk of cauliflower that's there. And a brain could probably fit right in my hand. Okay? Your brain can fit right in my hand. It's about all it is that's there. Did you ever think about thinking? And what you're doing right now, you're thinking, right? How does that take place? What's going on up there in that brain? Where is your essence? Where is your seat of consciousness? What makes you who you are? Right? What's going on? It's all up here, isn't it? This is all how this brain works. Your soul, I guess you can say, is somewhere up in this brain. And this brain is has electrical chemical reactions in it. Right now, as you sit here and think and probably say, what the hell is he talking about anyway? Okay? As you're thinking about it, or you're saying, gee, I'd like to go to sleep right now, it's too cold, he said it's going to be warm, it's really not warm. Whatever you're thinking about right now, it's all played out in this brain that's here. So what we want to do in this chapter is talk about how this old brain works and how just where the seat of your consciousness might be. This is not a question for a point. This is just an opinion question. In terms of the function in different brain regions, what percentage of the brain do you really utilize? Somebody always asks me this. They say, oh, Steve, what percentage of the brain do we really utilize? What do you think? Do we use all of it? Most of it? Some of it? Few of it? None? Hopefully you don't choose none, because that would mean you're dead, right? You're not using anything. You heard the term brain dead, right?
So when someone's in a coma, are they still thinking?
People in a coma are still active, yes. If you hook them up, and they do, because they want to monitor their brain, that things are still going on there. What they're thinking about, I don't know. Can't tell you, right? Okay, but they're still functioning, there's still flashing that's there. You see sparks coming on. What does an infant think about? Well, we don't know that either, right? But their brains are very, very active. They spend a lot of time in sleep. Matter of fact, the regions of the brain where we can tell when someone is dreaming by doing, and I'll tell you about the different ways we can look in the brain, we find that infants dream almost 80-something% of the time when they sleep. You and I dream 15-20%. But infants dream, what's that about? What do they dream about? Everything, right? The Super Bowl, things like that, right? Who knows, right? But that brain is still developing. That's there. All right, so your answer to this would be that, we're all over the place, right? All kinds of different answers. Most of you are at some or few. Really, the answer to this is 100%. We do use 100% of our brain. We don't use it all at once, though. Okay? We use it at different times. Even when you sleep, your brain is still active. Okay? It's processed. Right now, if I hooked you up to a functional MRI or a PET scan, what we find is that different areas of your brain are working at different times. Okay? So we use 100% of our brain, but not 100% of the time. Okay? At different times of your life, it's more engaged than others. The more a subject you know, and the smarter you are, or the better you're at a sport or any type of skill, the more efficient your brain is, which also means you use less of your brain. Those of you who are really good at math, and I threw out 6 numbers to add up, and you went, and you got it real quick, your brain doesn't work very efficiently. It works very efficiently. We'd see it light up just a little bit, and do that. Those of you who are trying to figure out the answers, your brain would be like a thunderstorm. It'd be like trying to figure out what's going on because you don't know the answers. People who are smarter, more efficient about skill development and things like that use actually less of their brain to perform it because their brain has gotten wired, and the wiring, the neurons have gotten really tight and what we call efficient. That's there. Well, I'll explain that a little bit more. Here it is. So make sure you copy all this down. No, that'd be too much. What I did, I have other slides that just about every single part of this brain is an arrow to, because I just want to show you that when we look in the brain, different parts of the brain handle different functioning. Yeah.
Back to the previous, like, is that also tied into like the motor reflexes?
Yes, the better you're at it. Like if you can play the guitar, okay, and when you first play the guitar, it's kind of like, what is this? What is this note? What's going on here? And your brain is like really lighting up. But once you learn that, okay, and you got it down, you don't even think about it anymore, right? Because what happens is that once you use the chords, once you're doing this, okay, your brain formed a pattern that's there. You do this part of the brain picks it up, and it's very, very, very efficient. It wouldn't even look like your brain was working that hard if you're that good at it. Peyton Manning, yesterday, his brain was just all over the place. He couldn't figure out what was going on in that. But just, I mean, if you ever had damage to, let's say, this part of your brain right here, okay, you might have a problem with problem solving. Damage this part, you may not be able to smell so well. Down here would be hearing, visual images, attach meaning and purposes to words, the motor cortex that's there. All different areas of the brain, okay, function differently, and we can pinpoint all of this now. We can show you exactly what's going on in the brain. I think people, if you want to do athletes, and who are really incredible athletes, I think this area of their brain is probably much more developed and much more efficient. Okay? Much more developed and much more efficient that's there. Children who have really good visual, spatial abilities, you know what that is? Being able to see things in space and be able to turn them around. Do you ever have little interlocking gears? Like you turn a gear this way, and there's a gear that's hooked up to this gear, and hooked up to this gear, and hooked up to this gear, and hooked up. Do you ever see those little kids' games that are that way? And if you turn this gear, then you might ask a child, which way is that gear going to turn, clockwise or counterclockwise? Some people who have incredible spatial ability, like engineers are really good at this, and artists who can see that, can look at those gears and go, oh, counterclockwise. Where the rest of us are going, this one, and we're trying to figure it out. That's there. These people may be, more efficient in their brain. They just do it better. All right? So in this chapter, what we're going to do is cover the bio part of biopsychosocial, as I explained last week. Just the bio part about, in particularly, the brain and how the brain affects how we think, feel, and behave. All right? So the first thing we want to talk about is neurons. Now, some of you have taken anatomy and physiology. Some of you have taken general biology. Some of you have taken it now. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. Okay? I'm taking this very, very slow. Because most people in a general psych course really don't have a strong biology background. So I'm assuming you know nothing about the brain, and I'm starting from scratch. So when we start from scratch, we start from what's called a neuron. The neuron is the building block of your neurology, of your nervous system that's there. And you have billions of neurons throughout your nervous system. That's quite a bit, billions, right? We throw that number around sometimes. That's a huge number that's there. There are three distinct parts to a neuron. There's what's called the dendrite, the soma, and the axon. So if my left arm was a dendrite, it looked like these big tree roots. And what a dendrite does is receive information from the other neurons. So the dendrite takes in information from the other neurons. It brings it down to the soma. So the soma is the cell body. And then the soma sends messages back out via the axon. So my right arm would be an axon, and it's called the axon terminals, which kind of look like branches. And what they do, if you look at me right now, what they do is that they match up with the dendrites. Dendrites, left hand, right hand axons, and they do this. So each neuron is they're not connected like this, but they're just like this. So what happens, message comes down this way, comes down this way, and then it jumps the gap in between and gives an electrical burst to this dendrite, which sends it back down to the next axon, and so on along down the line. If we looked in your brain right now, and if you're really thinking about things, what we'd see is this like a huge electrical storm. All kinds of electrical impulses that will then turn or engage little sacs, and I'll explain this a little bit more, that then release all these chemicals in your brain. Because your brain is really electrical chemical interactions. The essence of who you are is based on electrical chemical reactions. I don't mean to insult you all, but that's who we are. Electrical chemical reactions. Just to show you this, all right, so here's, okay, message comes down, okay, comes out, axon terminals. These are going to be the dendrites, like tree roots that pick it up, the cell body. Another picture of the dendrites. And what you wind up having is that they never really connect. They're not tied this way. There's always what's called a gap in between a dendrite and an axon, as it shows you up there. There's always a gap that's there. And this gap, okay, is full of chemicals. Remember the other day I talked about serotonin and available serotonin? Well, in between these gaps are all these chemicals that are there. What winds up happening is you have an axon that's here, and at the end of the axon there are these little chemical sacs. And there are, each neurochemical you have in your brain has its own individual sac. Okay, its own individual sac. So when an electrical impulse comes down, it hits this sac, okay, and it helps the sac burst open with neurochemicals. So here comes serotonin being released in between the gap between the dendrite and the axon. So now over here you have a dendrite, and the dendrite has what's called receptor sites. These are the little receptor sites, and there's a different receptor site per neurochemical. So there's just receptor sites for serotonin and that's it, or just dopamine and that's it. So all this chemical is floating around here. The other day I said to you, people who are very happy probably have a lot of available serotonin. What I mean by that, available, it's just floating around out here. Okay, it's just floating around up here. Sooner or later, what happens, the dendrite is going to take this in, and it hooks up, kind of locks it way in, and as it locks it way in, this is kind of weird, but it's converted from chemicals into electrical impulses, and then goes down the next one that's there. The essence of who you are, how you think, feel, and behave is right here. It's through all of this complex neurochemical electrical reactions that's there. Some neurochemicals speed things up, some slow it down, some distort your perception, some reduce pain. I mean, it's all kinds of aspects that go on in this area. When you take a neurochemical, physicians don't know enough about the brain or about neurochemicals. All we know, this stuff works. Okay, we know it works. But there's a little experiment going on with you, because there's different types of antidepressants, and they work a little differently in the brain, and we don't know about your brain. So if I was a physician and I gave you a antidepressant, I'd say to you, well, take it for 6 weeks, take it in the morning for 6 weeks, and then let's come back and let's check to see how you're doing. So you do that, you come back and you say, I don't feel any different. I still feel kind of depressed. The physician then would say, all right, let's take the same one, but let's increase the dosage. Let's get more available serotonin out here, okay? Let's increase the dosage, and maybe we'll take it in the afternoon or the evening. What they're doing is they're playing with your brain a little bit to try to see what may work. Now, there are two different types of ways that you can increase the availability of serotonin. There's one type of antidepressant that releases more serotonin. It just helps the brain release more serotonin, and it kicks it out there. There's another type of antidepressant that slows down the uptake. Okay? It doesn't vacuum it up as quickly and keeps it out here like that. So sometimes you'll be on one antidepressant and it just doesn't work. So he'll say, well, let's try you on something different. Well, when they try you on something different, what it'll be, it may slow down the uptake of that stuff or release it more. We just don't know what may work for you. So if you ever get on an antidepressant and say, oh, this just doesn't work, well, you might want to change it, okay? And they can change it with you to see which one works. It's a big experiment because we don't know enough about your brain because everybody's brain is just a little bit different. That's there. Every time you take any type of drug, okay, what it's going to do is change the neurochemical interaction that's there. So if you take a central nervous system depressant like alcohol, what it's going to do is slow down the messages in here and distort how you think, feel, and behave. If you took a stimulant, it stimulates all this, different changes of neurochemicals, stimulates, okay, the reaction from one neuron to another, changes the way you think, feel, and behave. So any time that you take any type of drug, if you want to call it that, okay, it's going to change the interactions here. That's the. When you start thinking depressive thoughts, okay, like, another cold day, when's it ever going to get warm again? When you start doing that, somehow or another, and I don't know how, okay, you start thinking about that. I know where it is. It's right here, your frontal lobes, where you think. Starts thinking, and your brain just goes, well, I guess we need to slow ourselves down. And it actually changes the release of the neurochemicals that are there to slow you down. And then you might then perceive it as getting tired, depressed, or whatever else. It's all an interaction that's there. All right, I'll take my time explaining this one. That's a lot to write down, all right? Neurotransmitters transmitting information in between the neurons. These are chemicals that transmit information through the neurons, are chemical substances secreted by a neuron that alters activity in other neurons, slow it down, speed it up, distort it. There are other types of neurotransmitters in your brain besides the ones I was just talking about. One is called neuropeptides. These regulate the activity of other neurons. Examples would be like enkephalins. Here's a key word, are opiate-like chemicals that regulate pain and stress. Endorphins are chemicals released by the pituitary gland that help reduce pain. So in your brain, you normally have opiate-like neurochemicals that reduce pain. These are called enkephalins. Also, endorphins are under that category as well. Those of you who are athletes and you were told to play through pain, most athletes are told that, right? Play through pain. One of the things you're doing is that you're engaging neuropeptides in your brain, particularly endorphins, so that you don't pay attention to the pain. Your brain will naturally do this for you. It is part of our survival mechanism that helps us to survive. I'll say this a couple of times during the semester. We are still animals out in a dangerous world, and our brains are going to try to help us survive in a dangerous world. So your brain sometimes automatically, okay, is going to release these neurochemicals without you thinking about it. I'm not going to do this to myself, but if I pinched myself, automatically I'd feel pain. Boom, without me thinking about it, my brain is going to start releasing endorphins and enkephalins so that I don't feel this pain that much. So at those neurotransmitters, what happens? It gets full of available endorphins so that a message from one neuron to the next about pain starts slowing down, and I don't feel that as much. That's what aspirin does, by the way, when you take it. Right? It just slows down those messages so you don't feel the pain. I can't say I'm a runner anymore. I don't run that much. I jog, okay? But I get up Monday through Friday, like at 4:20 every morning. And I exercise, then I go out and run, which is dumb, okay? So I've been running too long. I wear a brace on my knee, and I'm out there I probably get out by 4:45. So it's cold, right? In the morning, it's dark, it's cold. I'm out there running, I start running. And once I start running, I feel my ankles hurt, my knee hurts, my back hurts. I'm just in pain, okay? My unconsciously, key word, unconsciously, my brain's probably going, why are we running? It's 4:45 in the morning. Why are we doing this? Oh my gosh, we're probably being chased. Okay, that's why he's running. He's in danger. We need to save him. So the first thing that happens is that my brain starts releasing these endorphins to start what? Reducing the pain that's there. And I'm running, and as I run, for me, I've been running long enough in my life that once I get to around 2 miles, all of a sudden my brain is probably full of endorphins. I no longer feel the pain. And what I'm really into now is something called a runner's high. Because what endorphins are opiate-like substances. And I'm out there smiling and just having a good time, looking at the moon. Somebody had their sprinkler system going and it froze their yard. As I was running, I was going, that's pretty dumb. Okay, and I'm running along and just flowing. Okay? And then all of a sudden, I stop. And no one else is around. I'll tell you this looks really odd. When I'm done, I do a little, what's called behavioral reinforcement. I go, good job, Steve. Another day. You're out there running. You're right. Okay, so I'm feeling good. I go back in my house, feeling great, right? I still got this runner's high that's there. Those of you who are athletes will know if you get into a zone, into your performance in your game, you don't usually feel pain. Okay? It's usually gone. If you talk about the Super Bowl, there are people in the Super Bowl before who've broken their legs, okay, during the first quarter and played the second quarter, and at halftime they ran into the locker room and then they sat down and they couldn't get up again. They go, oh, my leg, it really hurts. What's going on? Well, what's going on? They broke their leg, right? Broke their leg, but they didn't feel it. How about this one, women? When you give birth, your brain releases more endorphins and kephalins than you'll ever release in your life. Not that it helps with the pain, but it helps a little bit that's there. Endorphins, just released naturally, that comes in, right? And it induces these really feel-good feelings that are there. Don't copy this down, all right? I just want to show you many, many different types of neurotransmitters and their effects on you. Endorphins are for pain reduction and reward, also for reward. So when I do this, good job, Steve, I feel good psychologically, but also I'm feeling pretty good as well. If you are addicted to something, like let's just say shopping, if you go shopping and when you shop, as you shop, if you're feeling good, I love shopping, okay, and as you're doing that, your brain is releasing endorphins. That's part of what makes you feel good that's there. All right? So any of these, norepinephrine, arousal, alertness, epinephrine, energy, and so on down the line. All these different neurochemicals, okay, when released in your brain will have an effect on how you feel. Let's talk more about the brain. The brain has a process called plasticity, which basically means it's the capacity of the brain to change in response to experience. Plastic, we can mold. The brain can be molded, can be sculptured. Each and every time you do something, over and over and over again, your neurons are actually going to change, move around, and line up. When you are young, okay, all your neurons are laid out in a basic structure. You may have a genetic predisposition, which strengthens some of those neurological connections. But every time you do something and do it over and over and over and over again, it strengthens those connections. And those neurons will actually move around. The question he asked before was, if you do something over and over again, what happens? Well, if it becomes unconscious, those neurons line up so you don't think about it anymore. It just becomes very efficient. Every experience you have, if you do it again and again, or every thought that you have, if you have it again and again and again, will increase neurological connections. If you think depressive thoughts over and over and over again, your neurons get lined up to make it even easier to have depressive thoughts. If you're a young child and you're exposed to a lot of stress in your life, your brain gets wired to respond to stress. So later on in the life, okay, you are going to be more stressful than other people. Those children that you have, their brains are at your mercy. Okay? You can rewire those brains by basically what you say, what you do, and how you expose those children. Okay? Did you know that your brain is not fully developed ever in your life? It's always rewiring and rechanging with the things that you do? Did you know that the cognitive part of your brain that allows you to make logical, rational answers, which is the frontal lobes up here, is not fully developed until your mid-20s? When your parents said to you when you were 16, what were you thinking when you did that? And you said, I don't know. Okay? That was actually a good answer. Because your brain at 16 is not fully wired to make logical, rational decisions. Your brain is better wired to make emotional decisions, because that's what develops first in this part of the brain. So that brain keeps developing throughout your life. Change the way you think will change the wiring. Change the wiring will change the way you think and behave. Neurogenesis means the production of new brain cells. Your brain is constantly making new brain cells. So if you killed a couple of hundred yesterday, okay, you may be able to regenerate them in the next couple of weeks that are there. And I did not say this, by the way, about 15 years ago. We used to say whatever brain cells you were born with, that's what you had. Kill a couple of thousand, you just lose them. But what we do know is that through neurogenesis, your brain is constantly producing new neurons. Mirror neurons is a newer research that tells us that neurons are activated when actions are merely observed. Okay? So just by watching something, you can change the neurological connections. It's not just by doing, by watching. If someone is a figure skater, and the Olympics is starting, this week, I think, okay? And they hurt their leg and they can't practice for 2 weeks, if they have wired their brain already for practice for years, they don't have to practice that week. All they would have to do is watch videos of themselves doing whatever they're doing perfectly, and that would help strengthen that neurological connections that are there. Those of you who are athletes will also know videotape training, okay, or looking at recordings and DVD things works amazingly if you can see yourself do it perfectly because of something called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are also the basis of empathy. You know what empathy is? Feeling what other people are feeling, okay? Right? I feel your coldness, okay? But feeling what other people are feeling. People who are sociopaths, you know that term? We also call them antisocial personalities. These are the kids you went to school with, like about 7 years old. Everybody went, don't go around that kid. That kid's evil. Okay? These are the kids that torture animals and things like that. They have no compassion for anybody else. They have no empathy. When we look in their brains, they have either no mirror neurons or very few mirror neurons. Something happened as they were getting older. Now, hopefully you're sitting there thinking along with me, what comes first? Lack of mirror neurons in their brain, or is it something in their environment, okay, that triggered that? It's probably both. It's probably both. Still with me? Let's see, for 1 point. The part of the nerve cell specialized for conducting information is what? What's one part of the nerve cell? So the key term is part. A part of the nerve cell that's specialized for conducting information. Is it the axon, the thyroid, the somata, the neurolemia, or the megaphone? Which one is the correct answer? Now, as you answer this question, you also need to know when you take multiple choice tests, a lot of professors are going to put on, they're going to throw some words in there that are called distractors. We want to separate out the people who know it and don't know it. And a distractor is an answer that kind of looks like a good answer. But if you really don't know it, okay, if you don't know the answer, you may pick the distractor that's in there. People who really know the answer will go right for it. And this, if you think about this question, this is a really easy question. If you think about what I'm asking you to do, parts of a neuron. So right now your brain should be, you're sitting there in the testing center taking the test, and you see the question, the key term is parts of a neuron. And right away your brain should think, what are the parts of the neuron? Give me the parts of the neuron, out loud. Axon. That's one. What's another one? Dendrite, soma, right? Those are 3 parts of a neuron. So right now my brain is going, parts of the neuron. I'm not even looking at the question yet. I mean at the answers. I'm first looking at the question, parts of a neuron, the axon, soma, dendrite. Okay, I got it. Now let me look through the answers that are here. Now you're saying, well, which one conducts and which one doesn't conduct? Doesn't really matter, does it? It does matter, but not for the answer, and I'll tell you in a second. All right, everybody got this? I didn't get to 56 yet. Somebody didn't do it, so are you ready? There we go. Come on. Somebody wake up. Okay, I got it. 1, 2, 3. All right, so 73% of you are correct. Now, why did I say this is an easy question? Obviously it wasn't if only 73 got it right. The 3 parts of a neuron are the axon, is that one of the answers? The dendrite, is that one of the answers? The soma, is that one of the answers? No. No, it's a distractor. It's a somata, whatever that is. Okay? Remember I said to you, watch out for distractors? Okay, so there is something called a somata, but that's not in this. It's the dendrite, the axon, or the soma. Okay? Soma's not listed there, so it's the axon. Sometimes if you don't know the material, or if you take the multiple choice question and you do it too quickly, and you go, what conducts? Which one is it? And you're going to get distracted and pick the wrong answer. So what I'm asking you to do is take your time and think it through. If I look at all of you and say, take your time, the 27% who got it wrong. All right, let's continue on. Let's talk about the central nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. There it is, the brain, central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord. Looks like an armadillo. Okay, there's the arm. And the long tail that's there. Brain, spinal cord. Now, if you were taking A and P, then I would say to you, you need to memorize the 5 lumbar nerves, and on and on and on. In this class, when I say, what is the central nervous system, you say, oh, it consists of the brain and the spinal cord. That's all you need to know. Okay, the brain and the spinal cord. Look at this picture over here. We have the brain, the spinal cord, and then what comes off from the spinal cord and the brain is the peripheral nervous system. So messages start up here, decisions are made, and then sent out through the nervous system to different parts of your body, telling your body to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. All right, the peripheral nervous system carries information to and from the central nervous system, as what I just showed you on the previous slide. There are 2 parts to the peripheral nervous system. One is called the somatic system, and it carries messages to and from the sense organs and the skeletal muscles. And here's the key word, it guides voluntary activities. So the somatic system guides voluntary activities. So somewhere up here, I just decided to pick up my arm. So I say, Steve, pick up your arm. Well, the somatic system sends a message down to my shoulder to pick up my arm. Then I'm going to say, wiggle my fingers, and I wiggle my fingers. All that message goes through what? The somatic system, because it controls voluntary aspects. Now, if I can't wiggle my fingers, then what? There's something wrong. We just back it up somewhere in my nervous system, in my hands, my arms, my shoulder. Boom, back to the spinal cord, back up to the brain. There's some distortion there somewhere. If you think of an electrical system, there's some short somewhere in there that doesn't allow that to happen. And people know enough about the brain that they can trace that back and find out what goes on. When somebody has a stroke, which a stroke is basically some damage to the brain, and if this damage is done like over here to my motor functioning, and I can't lift my right arm anymore, they can pinpoint where the stroke is. They can pinpoint where it is just by not doing that. But through physical therapy, and I mentioned this before, through physical therapy, because the brain has plasticity to it, if I go through rehab and they start picking up my arm and doing this for me, sooner or later the brain is going to change and a new part of the brain is going to take over so I can eventually raise my arm once again. Even though there's damage to one part of my brain, that part of the brain's not functioning anymore. It's dead. But another part of the brain may take over that functioning. That's another example of plasticity in the brain. That probably gave you enough time to write all this one down already. All right, the part in psychology we learn a lot, and you better learn this in this slide now because I'm going to cover this 2 more times during the semester. It's called the autonomic system. Carries messages to and from the internal organs and the glands, and it controls involuntary activities. Do you remember my statement? We're still animals out in the wild trying to survive. This is all about survival mechanism. It's called the autonomic system, and it has 2 parts to it, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic part of the branch of the autonomic nervous system is the emergency system that prepares the body for fight or flight. Get that? Automatically, your brain goes, oh my God, it's dangerous, something's going on. And you don't even think about it. Messages go out to prepare your body to fight or to flee. So let's say I took you people back 7,000 years ago. And we're out here in North Texas, and we have a meeting of the clans. All the various clans are coming from all over, and we have this big meeting. And what you all need to realize is when humans get together, what do? They like to have a good time. So when you were having a good time yesterday at a Super Bowl party, or you were out this weekend dancing and everything else, that's what they were doing 7,000 and 8,000 years ago when they got together. Okay? They came together. And the people in the first 2 rows went out there and they got us some fruits and vegetables. Next 2 rows went out and they killed a woolly mammoth. And then the next 2 rows behind them, they're the barbecue people, and they're cooking us up some woolly mammoth burgers and steaks and stuff. And the people in the last row, okay, found these grapes, okay, and they put them in this big vat for a while, and they fermented them a little bit, and now we have a nice Cabernet to drink, okay, because that's our wine. So we're out there, what, eating and probably drinking, because the people have always done that, okay, and playing music. Okay, humans have always played music. Okay, so when you were out dancing this weekend and stuff, people have been doing that forever when they got together. They were just having a party. So we're having a good time and everything, and out of the corner of your eye, she sees 2 saber-toothed tigers coming into camp. Because remember, at one time we were not on top of the food chain. We were part of the food chain. And they were coming to eat some nice human meat, okay? So she jumps up and she says, wagga, 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 okay? Which in the ancient language basically means look out, okay? And as soon as she screams that out, your brain, the sympathetic part says, oh no, danger, and your body gears up to grab your spear and fight, or for some of you, just take off, okay? The rest of those people way back when who didn't have an active sympathetic branch went like this. Oh, wow. Saber-toothed tiger. Ugh! They've got eaten. Okay? Those people who don't respond to, you ready? Here's what the word we use now, stress, are out. We don't have them in our genetic pool anymore. Most of us react to stress, fight or flight, danger, fight or flight. And this is what happens to you automatically. Your pupils are going to dilate. Ah, look out. You don't want to lose too many fluids because we need it for other indices down here, so you're usually not going to be able to cry. It's going to inhibit your ability to salivate. Okay? You're going to activate sweat glands to cool your body down because you're what? Fighting or fleeing. Increase your heart rate, increasing respiratory rates. Going to inhibit digestion. So that woolly mammoth burger you just had that's sitting in your stomach and intestines may lead to what? Indigestion, all kinds of stomach problems because it's just laying there. It becomes a Maalox moment or something, all right? Because it's just laying there. You need what? Adrenaline to get you up to flight or to flee, okay? Need sugar for energy from your liver. It's going to relax your bladder a little bit. So if you haven't gone to the bathroom recently and you're running, you may have a little accident. That's also why little kids, when they first learn to become toilet trained, when they get excited sometimes, they have little accidents because they haven't learned to control their bladders, particularly under stress just yet. It inhibits elimination, which means defecation. You're not going to do that. It'll inhibit your genitalias from working. Men will not get erections under the sympathetic reaction unless they have something going on with saber-toothed tigers or something like that. They might get excited. Women will not lubricate because under the sympathetic reaction, it's fight or flight, right? You're trying to save yourself, not have sex, okay? And it'll reduce a man's ability to ejaculate. So later on this semester, when we talk about sexual dysfunctions and issues and problems, a lot of it has to deal with anxiety, too much anxiety. So there you are, gearing up to fight or to flee. Fight or to flee. And then when we kill the saber-toothed tiger or we get away, when it's all over with, the parasympathetic comes in and quiets the body and reduces arousal. So parasympathetic on the other side slows everything down. And this is done automatically. Ah, danger, boom, fight or to flee. It's involuntary. Okay? Now, what happens to us nowadays, it's called stress, right? Did I tell you I changed the date of the test and your test starts tomorrow, even though I'm not going to cover the first 3 chapters? No. Now, some of you who really care about your grades might get a little pang of anxiety. Those of you going, he's an idiot. Okay, you're kind of mellowed out. It didn't react to that. But get on LBJ and have somebody cut in front of you. Ah! That'll do it, right? You don't think about it. Car doesn't cut in front of you and you go, oh, look, car cutting in front of me. I need to slam on the brakes. You don't do that. You just automatically react. And you have all that stress as well. Fight or flight. It's still around, buried deep in our brains. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the brain. The brain weighs only about 3 pounds. All right, so if you're 400 pounds, is it still 3 pounds? No, it's probably 3 pounds and a quarter or something like that. All right, it's still about 3 pounds. The brain to weight ratio is about 1 to 60. 1 to 60. Why did I put that on there? That's a weird ratio. What we find, other animals that have about a 1 to 60 ratio seem to be smarter in the animal kingdom. Okay? Humans, we think we're the smartest. But dolphins and porpoises seem to have a 1 to 60 brain ratio. That's there. And they do have a system of communication where they communicate with each other. They do use tools. They can put things in their mouths to nudge things away. Okay? They do seem to use tools as well. And they do seem to communicate in pods and in communities that are there. The other animals is going to be chimps and monkeys and apes, and they have their own communication. You can teach a chimpanzee a sign language, and that the chimp then will teach their offspring sign language, which is a sign of intelligence that's there. They also use tools to build things to help them forage for food, so they seem to be intelligent as well. And then somebody in my other class was telling me also that crows also have a form of intelligence, that they also use tools to get bugs out of grounds and stuff like that. I think that's true. I haven't looked that up. So I do know that dolphins, porpoises, elephants, by the way, seem to be pretty smart as well. All right, how do we know about the brain? How was I able to show you a picture before of saying this is where this is the seat of auditory aspects or visual? It's because we can look in the brain now. We can do what's called CT scans. You know what these are, computed tomography scans. Some of you had these done. Okay, they're enhanced x-rays. We have MRIs. You know what MRIs are. Those of you who are athletes probably have gotten injured before and had an MRI. Their magnetic resonance imaging gives us 3D pictures of the brain. PET scans, positron emission tomography. We look at brain activity. Okay, we look at brain activity. Okay, actually can peek in there and see whose brains are active right now. Okay, those of you who your eyes are closing, you're not very active. Okay, but most of you are probably pretty active. We can do that. The one they use a lot in psychology is called a functional MRI. It records brain activities, okay, an MRI, but also brain activities, where we can actually go in and see that a male's brain is a little different than a female's brain. We can find that when people are solving complex math problems, we can look and see what they're doing as well. So if I can get this to connect, I'll show you just a quick 3-minute YouTube video. No, this is actually New York Times, if I can get this to work, on how they do a functional MRI. Come on. You can do it.
We've been using MRI machines for the last 10 to 20 years to try to look at brain function and starting to look at brain connectivities. What I do is look at how the different parts of the brain work together to produce behavior. And I think that's the most simple way to think about the connectome. It's about how does the brain work together? And is there something about how well those different parts of the brain talk to each other that helps you do certain kinds of behaviors?
The Human Connectome Project, which Dr. Mark is a part of, is one of many that mark a surge forward in neuroscience. In fact, in April of 2013, President Obama announced the BRAIN Initiative with $100 million budgeted for the first year,
giving scientists the tools they need to get a dynamic picture of the brain in action and better understand how we think and how we learn and how we remember.
What we're doing in this project is pretty different in a couple ways. We have really state-of-the-art techniques and equipment that are going to let us do this in a much finer-grained way than has ever been done before. We're going to be studying approximately 1,200 individuals across a wide range of things like education levels and income levels, people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, so we can have a much better sense of the kind of true normal range of brain connections.
You can't be claustrophobic doing these studies. Look what you're going into.
So what Jim's going through is similar to what a typical participant would do in one of our studies.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
They do 4 different MRI sessions that each capture different pieces of information. So we have one MRI session that really focuses on getting very high resolution pictures of brain structure. Then they do a couple MRI sessions where we look at what we call resting state functional connectivities. They're spontaneous fluctuations in brain activity that occur over time. And we're interested in measuring those and using it to understand which areas of the brain are kind of fluctuating together. Then we also have people do some specific cognitive tasks while they're in the scanner to understand what parts of the brain are active when people are processing certain kinds of information or doing certain memory tasks or remembering things. We have people listen to language and process language. We have people do math. We have people look at emotional faces.
Okay, great. So we're going to start with the second one of that same test. So just double check with you again.
So we have people watch videos that have social interactions in them and look at the parts of the brain that respond to social cognition. And then the last scan session that people do is using a particular technique called diffusion imaging that is really trying to get at mapping that highway system in terms of those white matter connections between different parts of the brain. You know, one of the things I think we're really hoping